My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/campaign to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
Move your career further, faster in just 2 days with a Harvard Professional and Executive Development Program. Advance your leadership skills, craft smarter business strategies, build your network, and transform how you work and think to keep your career moving forward. You'll earn a certificate and can add Harvard to your resume with Harvard Professional and Executive Development. Learn more at professional.dce.harvard.edu/Spotify.
Ryan Reynolds here for, I guess, my 100th Mint commercial. No, don't. I mean, honestly, when I started this, I thought I only have to do like 4 of these. I mean, it's unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month. How are there still people paying 2 or 3 times that much? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be victim blaming here. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch. Whenever you're ready.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
Tension underlies every setting as solstice nears. A storm brews on the Illyrian steppes, the spring court suffers from Tamlin's inattention, and members of this inner circle try to focus on holiday preparations despite their own troubles. Though they valiantly attempt to gather together in harmony, old and new wounds alike disturb their hard-won peace.
The views expressed by the hosts are entirely their own and in no way represent the thoughts or intentions of the original author. This podcast is a discussion shared to spark thought and conversation on the characters and themes of this novel.
Though the hosts speak mostly within the constraints of the book, series spoilers may be discussed with or without warning. Explicit language, as well as themes of sex, violence, abuse, death, and depression will recur throughout this podcast. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome to Book Talk for Book Talk, a podcast where we deep dive into the writing of your favorite novels.
This season, we're exploring Sarah J. Maas's conclusion to Feyre's journey in the Court of Thorns and Roses series. This is Jac.
And I'm Amy. This week, we're discussing chapters 7 through 13 in A Court of Frost and Starlight.
The question we ask ourselves this week is, what are Rhys, Elaine, and Nesta really lashing out about?
Themes we see in this section include control and lack thereof. We start chapter 7 with the knowledge that Rhys is no better than Cassian was last episode, using the cold of the weather to numb his wings and distract himself from the reasons why he didn't sleep the night before, aka Tamlin. Like Jac said last week, temperature control is still a form of self-harm, but let's also talk about this from the perspective of power. What is Rhys trying to gain control over? Is it Tamlin? Sure. Is it the fact that Tamlin's lack of control means that Rhys is worried about the safety of the borders? Also true. But Rhys is also trying to gain control over his own body, the body that refused to sleep because of the thoughts that bothered him the night before. I'm going to argue that since Amarantha, Rhys hasn't often been without control of his own body, up until the moment that he died. And we know from the end of Wings and Ruin that he's been struggling to believe that he's actually alive. If Rhys's inability to sleep demonstrates a weakness in his control of his own body, he naturally will overcompensate by putting it through hell to make sure he is in control. Again, it's still self-harm, but I think it's important to remember that it's more than Tamlin being an irresponsible High Lord that causes Rhys to do this. It can also be a reminder to Rhys himself that he is alive.
I love this point about Rhys not being in control of his own body. And the pact that he and Feyre made just really adds to the whole not being in control of his own body thing. And it really, like, his own body being his own life. Again, none of this is a healthy way of doing things, but it's just an understanding of where he's coming from. The Tamlin of it all, especially in this episode, is just the big cover-up of what Rhys is really feeling. Not that he doesn't hate Tamlin, because Rhys certainly does, but there's a lot more going on with Rhys, and it's just easy to be mad at Tamlin. I want to look at this quote. She'd quickly fallen asleep, leaving me to brood before the fire in the sitting room. When I read this, I thought that Rhys wanted to talk and that Feyre left him to brood, as if Feyre knew he was going through something and didn't want to talk about it, which I could totally see. We know that Feyre has no interest in Tamlin and no desire to deal with him. But maybe Rhys needs to talk about the situation. Maybe he's going through some stuff. I mean, not maybe. We definitely know he is. But I think there's that idea that he needs to talk. And that's kind of what makes this, which makes sense why he goes so hard on Tamlin later. And it also makes this scene kind of ironic and a little hard to read because clearly Rhys needs to talk to someone. So who's in the scene with him? Daddy Azzy, one of the most closed off people here. Quote, born in lightless, airless prison meant to break him. Instead, he had learned its language. Like, he's so closed off that he had to learn the language of shadows.
It is ironic and sad because I think if Rhys could have talked about it before seeing Tamlin, he might have been a little less intense.
I think so. I can't wait to talk about that scene because I have conflicting emotions.
So in this chapter, Rhys and Azriel are talking about the Illyrians, and Azriel shares information about the Illyrians that Rhys really doesn't want to hear. During this scene, Rhys observes the fact that, quote, Truth Teller's obsidian hilt seemed to absorb the first rays of the sun. This is not the first time we've seen this detail about Truth Teller or about Azriel's shadows. We usually talk about it in the context of why Azriel isn't the guy for Elaine. But let's remember that last week, we ended the episode with Mor's need for light when she was in the Court of Nightmares. This scene comes directly after Mor's visit to the Court of Nightmares. I see the description of Truth Teller as a reminder of why Azriel and Mor will never work, regardless of Mor's sexuality. Purely from an imagery standpoint, Mor is synonymous with the sun, seeking sources of light, wearing gold, figuratively shining bright from the other's points of view. Azriel is the opposite. His shadows literally devour light. Azriel would devour Mor just as much as he would devour Elaine, which just makes Elaine all the more of a carbon copy replacement for Mor in Azriel's eyes.
Azriel just keeps devouring people and not in the way that I need to see.
I mean, he can devour me.
Yeah, but he won't do that.
He won't.
When was the last time he was even with someone? If he has slept with someone during this time, I will feel betrayed. Do you think he and Nuala and Caradwin ever had a threesome?
That would be the most awesome fanfic on the planet.
Except that they're sisters, so that is incest.
Not if they're only pleasuring him. I don't know.
Okay, one and then the other. But I agree. When I first read this scene, I definitely imagined it to be more about Mor rather than Elaine. And for me, that's because of the name Truth Teller and the fact that it gets brought up right after Mor's chapter. It feels really important.
Remember how last week I talked about the fact that the way a sentence was written made it seem like Cassian and Azriel might not be full Illyrian? I see that happen again in this chapter. Quote, though the cobalt siphons were proof that Azriel's Illyrian heritage ran true. Now this could be me splitting hairs, but something about this feels like it's implying Azriel could also have heritage of another sort, especially when you consider his Shadowsinger gifts. I would also like to point out that Rhys mentions how he'd seen what Azriel had done to his brother centuries ago, but there's no mention of his father, which feels like it's going to come back around somehow.
I'm going to say yes, and I'm going to skip ahead a little bit to show why I think you, Amy, are on the right track.
Thank you.
Quote, as had always understood me best, more than the others, save my mate. Whether it was his gifts that allowed him to do so, or merely the fact that he and I were more similar than most realized, I never learned. So when I read this, I thought that they were potentially distantly related. There's a theory out there, and I'm not going to spoil it, so I'm going to be super, super vague. But there's a theory that either Az or Rhys are related to someone, and people argue whether it's Rhys or Azriel that is actually related. But why not consider both? Why can't they both be distantly related, which might make them distant cousins?
Yeah, I could totally see it.
And to just keep going on with this idea, 2 paragraphs down, Rhys calls Azriel his brother. And yes, that's something that he does, but it just felt like really sus timing. And both Az and Rhys are really going off on the Lyrians in this chapter too. They're both distancing themselves from the thing that they're both in theory related to.
Yeah, it's sus.
Yeah.
To add one more point to the pile, one of Rhys's mannerisms is to pick invisible lint off of his clothes. Yet in this chapter, we see Azriel make this move. Azriel, and I thought it was absurd, but right after this is Rhys's quote that Az and I are more similar than others realize. Like, it feels really significant, and I feel like it's going to come up again.
Also, isn't Azriel wearing leather? His Illyrian leather's like
Yes.
this? Can lint even stick to leather?
I think the actual quote is like dust, but regardless.
It's like slidey.
Uh-huh. It's slidey.
It's slidey. I don't look at someone wearing leather and be like, wow, you should dust yourself off. You know, he's really imitating Rhys there.
He really is.
Yeah.
SJM is going hard. Speaking of Azriel, there is a lot of mention of his icy nature here. He has an ice-cold stare. He falls into a frozen precipice in his memories, and frost cracks over his eyes. Now, like Jac, there is another spoiler-related theory why there's an association of cold with Azriel and also Rhys that I'm not going to bring up, but I'm just going to point out this series of images for convenience sake. Because this association has been around for the past 2 books. It's just very heavy-handed right now, and it's easy to point out. Also, side note, Cassian's been associated with flames in the past, which we know from an imagery perspective links him with Nesta. I just realized it also makes Cassian and Azriel yin and yang, fire and ice.
I love that. I love that.
We see a lot of setup for Vassa and Jurian's storyline being done in this episode. We don't know where it will go, but we get the lay of the land in this chapter, and I'm curious to see where SJM will take it. I want to talk about Azriel being unwilling to keep tabs on Lucien. Since day one, we've been talking about how information is power, and Azriel's job is to have all the information. So why would Azriel refuse to keep tabs on Lucien in order to respect Elaine? Do we think he's lying?
Yes. Yes, he's 100% lying. You're lying.
Lying liar.
Lying liar liarson. You sit on your throne of lies. Azriel is lying. And I think Rhys thinks, well, actually, I know Rhys thinks so too.
Right.
Where he was like, oh, you're going to keep claiming that? And it's also bullshit that he wouldn't keep tabs on Lucien. Azriel keeps tabs on Amren. And Amren is part of the team.
Right.
It feels like it would be his job to keep an eye on Lucien, right? Like, hey, buddy, we don't know where his allegiance completely lies. Let's keep an eye. So then I have to ask myself, well, why did he lie? What is it that he saw that he doesn't want to admit? And I'm wondering if it's more like he doesn't want to admit to himself that maybe Lucien is a good guy.
Yeah. I mean, because that's probably all he would see.
Yeah. He's like, I mean, I'm sure he was spying on him being like, I can't wait to be a little snitch. Snitches get stitches.
I can't wait to kick you out of the inner circle.
I'm a narc. Like, it's interesting. We are told snitches get stitches unless you're a spy and then you're good at it.
It's a fair point.
I just got real deep over here, though. I also want to know if Elaine saw Lucien and Grayson together, because there's talk about Lucien seeing Grayson, and we never get that again. Maybe Elaine sees Vassa and Grayson together and hit it off. I don't know. I have so much speculation of her visions and the Grayson and the Vassa and the Lucien.
Another question I have, is anyone else curious why Azriel doesn't get Elaine a gift this year? Like, he purposefully asks, do we have to get the sisters gifts?
It's rude.
It is. Is it meant to indicate that Azriel hasn't completely fallen for her? I mean, it certainly makes his gift next year very significant.
Yeah, I mean, it makes Azriel have to confront his own feelings for her more, because then you have to say, like, okay, well, I can't get her a tea set, you know, like, or I can't, what can I do? You know, like, do you show that you know them really well, or do you show that it's just, like, superficial? You know, he has to really examine all that stuff. And to think that there's a whole year of tension between the two, you know, like that time to build. Also, at one point, Rhys says, I don't think the sisters expect any gifts. Let them exchange it amongst themselves.
Yeah.
Welcome back, me, the petty fourth sister. Don't you fucking speak for me. I want presents.
I don't care who it's from.
I don't care who it's from. You think I want my sisters to choose that for me? I mean, yes, and I want all of you.
Right.
I tell my mom and my stepdad that I still expect separate presents from each of them.
And a combined present.
I'm such an asshole. It was definitely when she got married. I was like, I just want you to know, I don't want you to think that you're excused from getting me your own present. I'm a dick. No, I'm not. I embrace this. I love presents.
You're true to yourself, man.
I'm honest. I can be bought.
Yeah.
I can be bought. Tell me I'm pretty and buy me shit and I'm yours.
Towards the end of the chapter, Rhys mentions Azriel going to Rose Hall and to get a gift for her, a mysterious her. We don't know anything about this person, but like the little tidbit earlier, I think it's going to come back when we start to get more of Azriel's story. Let me throw my theory into the ring, which I think is a common theory. I think Rose Hall may be where his mother now lives and who he's going to visit. Maybe Rose Hall once belonged to his brothers who he killed. I don't know.
So Rose Hall has always had a lot of suspicion. You know, a lot of people think that her is definitely their mom. I always assumed it was his mom, especially since Rhys wanted to get her a present.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I wanted to see if there's anything else out there. So I did a lot of intensive research. And by intensive research, I went to TikTok and I looked it up and I saw that Happy Hermit, aka Lily, we love Lily here, and see what she had to say. Basically, Lily said that you have to remember what's going on in this book. And that's all the political changes that are happening within Illyria and with the Illyrians. Rhys is changing the laws. He's helping women be able to fight, be able to inherit more. And then you consider the fact that in the next chapter, we're going to meet Emery. So keeping that in mind, we can guess that whoever is at Rose Hall is someone who inherited it. And why would Azriel let his mom stay in a place where she was abused? So Lily thinks that it could potentially be a half-sister.
Also, Rose Hall, you can't tell me that the name of this place is not intentionally supposed to link Azriel to Elaine mentally for readers. Why would I say it links us to Elaine? If you read Azriel's bonus chapter from Silver Flames, spoiler, he gives Elaine a necklace with a rose pendant, and in a couple chapters, Elaine is wearing a rose-colored dress.
We're going to talk a lot about the secret chapter from Silver Flames in this one, so hear ye. You got your spoiler. We're going to talk about it. But SJM does so much work in this book to link the two of them together.
Yeah, link Azriel and Elaine.
Yes, just to unlink in many ways in that freaking secret chapter. And there's so much that happens in this that references the secret chapter. What are you doing, SJM? She's Machiavellian.
She is.
I just imagine her typing at her computer going, wah, just like, I'm messing with all of you. Because there is so much linking between the two.
There is. And it just like rips my little heart out.
I know. I was about to ask a dumb question and I decided I'm going to ask the dumb question. Okay. What's the opposite of roses? Is there like an antonym to roses? Because
in the form of flowers?
Yeah, because I'm wondering if, there's so much linking between the two. Is there anything to hint to the, other than the moments where they reference that his darkness absorbs the light or takes over?
Yeah.
There's so many rose references. Oh, now I'm thinking about the fact that Tamlin's court is all dried out. But I don't think that has anything to do with Elaine. Too much symbolism.
Too much.
Too many clues. I eat it up.
We find ourselves back at the Illyrian camp in Chapter 8, where everyone is preparing themselves for the coming storm. If you think about it, the storm can be considered a metaphor, talking about images.
Mm-hmm.
Too many images.
Too many images.
But this storm is a great one because it's a metaphor for the tension among the Illyrians and their disdain for Rhys and Cassian, especially when you consider the scene we just saw between Rhys and Azriel. In some ways, the storm foreshadows the tension we will continue to see in Silver Flames.
Storms for everyone. I think it could also be said that there's a connection with Cassian and Nesta, knowing that there's a storm coming at Solstice and that he's going to have to hash it out with her. And it'll take a while before they can dig themselves out. The imagery is insane. Might as well call her Sarah Imogen Maas. I regret nothing.
In this chapter, Cassian meets Emery, and he observes in Emery some similar mannerisms of Nesta's. And we discover that Cassian names Nesta's poses. In my mind, that's the same as Feyre naming paintings in her mind. Granted, Cassian's pose nomenclature is just great comic relief. What it does as a writing device is helps us as readers differentiate the narrative voice, because this is among the first times we're hearing from Cassian. When writing from multiple perspectives, making the reader believe they're reading from a different character's point of view can be difficult. Adding mannerisms and quirks that convey personality in the writing, like Cassian naming Nesta's poses, is an effective way to do this.
And it's also a good way because SJM goes from first person to third person, and that can add distance. Like using third person means that the author narrator can go as close as possible to that character or as distant as they want to that character.
What are some other ways to add character to the narrative? Well, as Jac said, if you're really in the third person, very close to the character, almost in their mind, think about what a character would notice about other characters. For example, a character who is insecure about the shape of their nose might always mentally comment on other people's noses. A character obsessed with food may be sensitive to smells and always remember moments in the past based on what food they ate at the time. This can help readers both differentiate between narrators, as well as help create a more realistic character in general.
Also, shout out to Emery. I just love when we get to meet a character and we don't know how important they're actually going to be. And the fact that Cassian just met his mate's future best friend, one of the women who helps bring Nesta back and puts her together.
It's beautiful.
It's so sweet.
And he helped her, like he wasn't an asshole to her.
Yeah. Now let's get into some Emery talk.
Yes. Emery as a character is an interesting intersection of modern and traditional Illyrian. While we know she will play a bigger role in Silver Flames, I want to view her as a metaphor for Cassian. So let me do some comparisons for you and why I think they're very similar. On one hand, Emery is female, which is obviously opposite of Cassian, and she comes from a traditional family, which we know because her wings are clipped so she can't fly. Being born female was out of her control, and she suffered the consequences for it because of men who determined they knew what was right or better. So there's a lot of similarities between Emery and Cassian when you think about it. Just like Emery was born female and had no control over that, Cassian was born a bastard. His mother gave birth to him out of wedlock, and again, out of his control. He's treated like trash since birth because of the way his society deems his worth, because of stupid reasons. I'm not very articulate, but I don't care.
Stupid reasons. Genuinely, though.
Genuinely. Let's look at another facet of it. Despite her shitty circumstances, Emery defies her traditional upbringing by refusing to look down when spoken to by Cassian, a habit most Illyrian females have, and maintains her dead father's shop despite societal norms amongst Illyrians. In this way, she's trying to take back her power from society that gave her nothing. Cassian is not that much different. He's now literally the general of the Night Court army, a status he should not have as a bastard, and therefore commands all Illyrians despite the way he was treated. Cassian has power over Illyrians even if they don't like it, in addition to him having just 7 siphons and being materially more powerful. There's a lot of similarities between Emery and Cassian when you think about it, which is why I think Cassian wants to help Emery and pay her for all her cold weather gear to distribute to the poor, and why Nesta will be drawn to Emery in the future, because Emery and Cassian are virtually the same.
I love your interpretation. I love that their relationship is so complex that you can have one interpretation, and I'm about to go into my interpretation. Literature, baby. I like to view Emery as meaning something a little bit different. I think Cassian looks at Emery and only sees his failures. We know that Cassian is beating himself up over the fact that a bunch of soldiers died, even though it wasn't his fault. Like, they all went to war. They knew it was happening. That makes me sound callous. It is sad. It's very sad. We also know Cassian is trying hard to get the women to train and to lift them up. And I'm sure he thinks that he messed up when he sees Emery, that she's one of the women who slipped through the cracks and that he wasn't able to help her.
No, I mean, you're totally right. I think seeing the scars on her wings really, really affects him.
Yeah. And trigger warning for some graphic bodily harm. But it gives me, and I think it's supposed to be similar to genital mutilation.
I was thinking that too.
And when that's something that does happen in the world to women, it's horrific. It's something that's hidden and you can't see. And something like having your wings clipped is in your face
Mm-hmm.
and you have to see it, which I wish there was a way to see how shitty men are, like the ones who do this and stuff and not get away with it. Like you're able to keep it like a hidden secret.
Right. Speaking to that point, I think the visibility of it in Emery's case almost gives men more power over her.
Yeah.
Because you see that they've disabled her.
Yeah. And there's so many, genital mutilation is one way of looking at it. There's a lot of other examples throughout history and in different cultures that have done things to hurt women physically to stop them from being powerful.
Mm-hmm.
We also know that Emery is a big fat clue as to what's coming in Silver Flames and how Emery and Nesta are about to become besties. So using the frame of mind that Emery is another one of the females that Cassian feels like he failed, I just want to keep this frame of mind, right? That Emery is one of the women that Cassian believes that he failed. So let's also remind ourselves as to why Cassian is fighting for women as hard as he is. It's because of his mom. And I'm sure that's also someone who he feels like he failed because by the time he went back to save his mom, she had already been killed. I like to think that when he sees Emery, he sees his mom in many ways. But unlike his mom, he could potentially still help her. He can still get to her in time. I think that's also why it means so much when Emery and Nesta get along, because Emery is a representation of Cassian's mom. And Nesta and his mom hopefully would have gotten along, I like to imagine. Mm. Especially since Cassian thinks there's a few times that Emery and Nesta would get along, meaning they're very similar, and Cassian wants to be with someone like his mom. No, that's...
Mommy issues.
Don't we all have them? But, you see what I'm saying here,
Yeah,
right?
I do. It brings Cassian comfort that Nesta can get along with Emery because Emery is Illyrian and has a hardness about her he assumes his mother would have.
Yeah.
And it's just like, Emery, a.k.a. mother, Nesta, love each other.
Mummy? Even though he sees Emery and sees the clip wings and sees the, shit, there's another woman who I wasn't able to help, he also sees her having inherited a store. Mm-hmm. Being able to self-sustain, even though no one shops from her. Mm-hmm. But it's kind of both somewhere of a reminder of what he still needs to do / he has made an impact.
Yeah, and hope for the future.
And hope for the future.
More females can own stores and more females can have independence.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the chapter, the image of the storm is brought back to the forefront. Quote, a herald of the storm to come. Not just the storm that was barreling toward these mountains, but perhaps one that had been brewing here for a long, long time. While I said earlier the storm could be viewed as tensions among the Illyrians and their disdain for race, I think you can also view the storm as the Illyrians and their treatment of females. That's what Cassian's been focused on during this novel, and for him to call out the storm after visiting Emery makes it feel very focused on the treatment of females at the camps. The image of the storm foreshadows Silver Flames since there's so much overlap with the Illyrian and females theme. Chapter 9 begins with Feyre thinking, quote, I shouldn't have eaten dinner. For all the times Feyre vomited in Thorns and Roses, she has never been one to think that she shouldn't have eaten. As someone who's struggled with food insecurity throughout nearly half her lifetime, Feyre would never regret eating dinner, even if she ended up vomiting. So for Feyre to think that she shouldn't have eaten tells us she's very, very uncomfortable right now.
And if you think about the context of food is power, it shows that she's feeling weak or wants to give up her power, maybe. You can look at it, she wants to surrender it. That's an interesting way of looking at it. Mm-hmm. But think about all the times that Feyre found shame when she was feeling sick and throwing up, how it showed her humanity. And now it's much more of a, oof, shouldn't have eaten, I don't feel a little sick, and it doesn't have the same meaning like it used to.
And that is gruff. In this chapter, we learn that Feyre wants nothing to do with Tamlin. Quote, I might owe Tamlin my mate's life. I might have told Tamlin I wished him peace and happiness, but I did not wish to see him, speak with him, deal with him. Feyre, first off, is entitled to feel this way, and I think we can all agree. Second, this explains the Tamlin comparisons she makes in her narrative without naming Tamlin. Feyre acknowledges the differences between her life with or without Tamlin without acknowledging Tamlin because that is how she's found her peace. Just wanted to point that out since we talked about unspoken comparisons last week.
In many ways, I think Feyre is the only one here who has found peace or an understanding. I mean, she still has her PTSD and is still struggling, but she is so clearly able to identify what's upsetting her and reason it. Be like, you know what? I don't need to see him, and that's okay. So it makes sense that Feyre acknowledges that she's found peace with Tamlin, but that does not mean she has to be near him or see him or anything like that. That's okay.
It is okay.
I used to, back in the day, like early 20s, when I went through like my first breakup, think that if you weren't friends with your ex, like if you didn't get to that point, then that means you didn't heal or let go. Like if you can't embrace them and see them, that means you haven't been able to let them go and you're still harboring some things. It's like, no, maybe he cheated on me and was an asshole.
Yeah. I don't have to be friends with assholes.
No.
In this chapter, Feyre is attempting to go to Racina's studio to paint with her and others. She decides against it. And it's not out of character for Feyre to decide that. Instead of wanting to go into Racina's studio with its, quote, golden spill of light, she would rather go into the empty studio with the, quote, shadows thick. Feyre is comfortable in darkness. She has an affinity for it. We all know that. Remember last week? Feyre did not like being seen by other shoppers around the rainbow. She did not want to be seen for herself when she was not in her high lady mindset. We see how Feyre is still closed off and in needing of healing through her decision to paint in the abandoned, boarded-up studio that belonged to Polina. If you recall in Thorns and Roses, Feyre was given a painting room in the Springcourt Manor that we called her inner sanctum. The same has taken place here, but Feyre has claimed it for herself, away from her family, away from the townhouse, because Feyre needs to work through her issues separate from them and on her own.
When I was reading this, I kept thinking about how Feyre said that the lighting wasn't very good in this boarded up area because, like, you know, the windows aren't there, but she'll probably need some Feylight, some fire. And then I think about when Rhys asked Feyre, why doesn't she use the spare room to paint in the townhouse? And she says, oh, because the lighting was bad. It doesn't matter if the lighting is good or bad. Feyre needed to do this alone. Letting it all out in the townhouse just would not work.
And that's just another example of Feyre being an unreliable narrator.
Yeah.
She's just like, oh, the lighting was bad, and now I'm going to go paint by Feylight, which is even worse.
Right.
Feyre needs to work on some very personal stuff, and she needs that separation.
I'm wondering how much of it is unreliable and how much of it is she feels like she can't tell Rhys that.
Yeah, I think she's afraid of hurting his feelings.
Yeah, I mean, just saying like, hey, I can't do this because you're here.
Yeah, I think so.
Feyre uses her flames to help light the room to paint. And while fire is the obvious choice to keep things lit, I want to reflect on how far the meaning of fire has come. In Wings and Ruin and Mist and Fury, when we see Feyre use her fire power, it's usually when she's leaning to her dark side, when she's really going for pain or the kill. Now, Feyre is using it to light her space to paint. Fire has gone from being a gift of death and destruction to a gift of healing and creativity.
I love that point because if you remember later on, she thinks about wanting to learn how to control the fire gift enough so that she can warm her hands and warm her clothes.
Mm-hmm.
Fire is no longer an avenue for anger.
Yeah.
It's something that she's learning to control, and that just speaks growth to me.
Yes, I love it. She's embracing it.
She is. Our baby girl's grown up.
Oh my God. Turning 21 and everything.
I also want to make a point that I think that the abandoned studio is a lot like the cabin retreat in Mist and Fury for Feyre. Feyre needs a space to process alone, and so for the first time in her existence, she's claimed that space for herself. Moore didn't take her there. It wasn't given to her. It's so beautiful that when Feyre summons a flame to light the room, she describes it as, quote, warming it back to life, just like Feyre is being warmed back to life and who she is at her essence.
Chapter 10 starts with Feyre painting her little heart out. And if we aren't sure what she's painting, Feyre gives you a clue. Quote, my heart thundered the entire time, steady as a war drum. War drum, as in war drum music, as in the music we had for season 3. Feyre was listening to our podcast. Obvious answer. Feyre is working out some post-war PTSD, which makes a lot of sense, but I love the descriptions for that. I also get some ACOTAR flashbacks here. Quote, I painted until my back cramped and my stomach gurgled with demands for hot cocoa and dessert. I just think about the molten chocolate that Alice made for Feyre back in ACOTAR, and I just want to say molten chocolate sounds better than hot cocoa.
I agree. It also sounds like it's going to burn my mouth.
That's what I want. I want molten lava chocolate. That's what I want my power. My superpower is to be able to touch and eat lava.
Feyre paints until she's too hungry to continue, as Jac points out. We find her hungry, but also made alive through the process of her painting. Notice this quote. The sheer unleashing of it, as if I were a racehorse freed from my pen, the image in my mind a dashing vision that I sprinted to keep up with. Who's been called a colt, which is a male horse? Vasa, at the end of Wings and Ruin. Who also owns horses? More, as we will discover at the end of this book. There's something that feels significant to me about this connection between women, feeling free, and horses. I don't know that I have a theory on it, but I wanted to point out the repetitive use of that imagery.
They have racehorses in this world, too.
I know. I thought the same thing. Do you have a Kentucky Derby?
Right? Like, what is going on here? Can we talk a little bit more about this, please? Okay, that's cool. Who races them, Amryn?
Yeah.
Because you have to be tiny, right? You have to be a jockey.
The ponies.
She races ponies because she's so little.
In the wake of her painting, Feyre discovers, quote, a sort of quiet followed, as if it were a layer of snow blanketing the earth, clearing away what was beneath, more cleansing, more soothing than any of the hours I'd spent rebuilding this city. Snow here has become cleansing, which I don't think it was for Feyre in last week's episode. The healing nature of the painting process, reflected by the use of snow imagery, is emphasized by Feyre's thought that, quote, the first stitch to close a wound. That's how it felt.
Feyre is so aware in this moment, and I am here for it. She recognizes that she's afraid to paint, but knowing that she needs it. Feyre recognizes that this is a wound that's healing, almost as if other people will need the same type of healing. Hint, hint, wink, wink. I just appreciate the self-awareness. Let's talk about why she chose to paint herself first. Feyre paints the beast she saw in the Ouroboros, and we know that she has a lot of pain to process. But the first thing Feyre chooses to see again is her true inner self, the monster, the beauty within. I feel like it makes sense, and it shows that she's trying to get to the meat of it.
Despite the healing nature of the painting process, there's a resistance to owning that healing. So even though Feyre paints herself and she needs to see that inner self, she's unwilling to sign her name on the painting or take it with her because she doesn't want to be connected to it. In some ways, you can see this as the healing being slow going. But I'm going to bring up a different point we haven't discussed, Jac. Let's look at this.
Wait, this isn't even in the notes?
Nope.
Whoa, I have to pay attention. Hold on.
I thought about it 5 minutes ago.
Okay.
Let's look at it from the feminist lens.
Oh.
In Thorns and Roses, we talked about painting being Feyre's access to the feminine, right?
Mm-hmm.
By painting again, Feyre is now accessing the feminine again, trying to rebalance the masculine, the war version, the high lady who is very in her power, using her magic, versus the feminine that is creative, that is at peace.
And again, we don't necessarily believe that, guys. We're not saying that feminine can't be in power. We're just using the gender hetero norms.
We're using gender hetero norms of the feminist lens in literature.
Yes.
Right? So what I'm going to say next is that to put on the feminine is to accept what we know is going to be motherhood for Feyre.
Yeah.
And that, again, we're not saying you have to be feminine to be a mother. You don't have to be a mother to be feminine. It's just literature. But Feyre's not willing to make those moves yet, right? She's not willing to have kids yet. She's still working on her piece, which is why she can't accept the painting if you see the painting as the feminine.
I love this. I want to explore this more. I also think that this could be almost the merger of the two, because we did talk a lot about season 1, that representation of painting as the feminine. And the fact that here she is embracing that quote unquote feminine, but what she's painting is herself as a monster, which kind of looks a little bit like Rhys's monster, which could be quote unquote the masculine. So this could be the merger of her two selves. And I really love the point that in Wings and Ruin, actually, let me go back a little bit. I feel like in Mist and Fury, she found the perfect balance of her masculine and feminine that we had seen. She was able to fight and wear the leathers, or she was able to dress up. She did whatever the hell she wanted to do. And I really appreciate that balance of her versus Wings and Ruin. It was all war all the time. Like there wasn't really an opportunity to go into what was that balance of her. And in many ways, she, I don't want to say regressed, but, you know, has to find herself again.
Yeah.
And this idea of using the feminine vehicle to capture this masculine side is the merger of the two, which then would bring her to a choice that she would make, which is motherhood, because she's now merged her own masculine and feminine.
Yeah, I agree. That's exactly where my brain is going too. And in some ways, like you said, Wings and Ruin wasn't a regression from her. She didn't really have a choice.
Yeah.
The feminine could not necessarily serve her at that time. Yeah. Or at least she viewed the feminine as maybe not serving her. And so this is a reclamation of that balance that she found in Mist and Fury.
If anything, I'm going to say in Wings and Ruin, the feminine bit her in the ass because she was using those feminine wiles to lure Tamlin. And in that time, she learned by the end of the book of that was a huge mistake. So she might even be resenting that.
Yeah, and that's why we're seeing her go through this process of painting, rediscovering herself, because she has to reteach herself that balancing the feminine and masculine is a good thing, and it is healthy, and it is okay for her.
Yeah. And then, yeah, coming back to what that means. Like, Feyre is still a warrior.
Yeah.
She doesn't have to dress up in gowns all the time.
Yeah.
But she also wants to be a mother.
Right. And she wants to wear the gowns.
And she wants to wear the gowns when she wants to wear the gowns.
Yeah.
Like, I do appreciate Feyre as a character of having that balance. I love Bryce. We know you and I are big fans of Bryce. That's a character who I think has really embraced the feminine.
Yeah.
You know, like she thrives in her sexuality.
Yep.
Huge fan of her. I don't think we appreciate Feyre enough as a character that strikes such a good balance between the two.
Yeah.
And just kind of lives in her own happy zone.
Yeah.
I will say, though, that the last line of this chapter is, quote, "Tomorrow then, I'd come back tomorrow to claim it being the painting." It's such an interesting choice to say claim rather than I'm going to come back and pick up my painting. I believe it's Feyre needing time to process what she just did and what she just painted and then be ready to come back and not just accept the side of her, but claim it because she ends up giving this to Rhys.
Which is a big deal.
It is a big deal.
And claiming has a sense of ownership and control, whereas accepting is almost like
a passive
thing.
Yeah, like you can accept something, but just say like, okay, there it goes.
Yeah.
A claiming is this is mine.
Exactly.
It's funny because I think she gives the present to Rhys and it's in front of everyone. Like they're off to the corner.
But Cassian sneaks up behind them.
Yeah, but it's just like, I feel like whose dog is this? That's an ugly ass thing. What is this? What the hell? Oh my God, get this monster out of my sight. Someone burn it.
You're Cassian.
I am Cassian.
Fall has officially started here in Los Angeles, and that means we finally get to do fall activities.
I have been counting down the days for when I can go to pumpkin patches, maybe even hit up an apple orchard, and I get to do all of it looking super cute in my Quince boyfriend sweater.
This weather is perfect for my dark academia vibes, and I'm so excited to bust out my washable silk blouse because you know I'm going to be taking pictures.
Quince is known for their Mongolian cashmere sweaters from $50. And that's not all. Quince has so many other amazing things on their website.
All of those items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands.
That includes leather jackets, cotton cardigans, soft denim. Like my entire fall wardrobe is genuinely turning into Quince wardrobe.
By partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the cost of the middleman, we get savings as the customer.
One of my favorite parts about Quince is the fact that they only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices. And they still manage to get premium fabrics and finishes for that, luxury feeling for every item that they have.
Get cozy in Quince's high-quality wardrobe essentials. Go to quince.com/booktalk for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's Quince, QUINCE.com/booktalk, BOOKTALK, to get free shipping and 365-day returns. That's quince.com/booktalk.
Move your career further, faster in just 2 days with a Harvard Professional and Executive Development Program. Advance your leadership skills, craft smarter business strategies, build your network, and transform how you work and think to keep your career moving forward. You'll earn a certificate and can add Harvard to your resume with Harvard Professional and Executive Development. Learn more at professional.dce.harvard.edu/Spotify.
Hey, I'm Ryan Reynolds. At Mint Mobile, we like to do the opposite of what Big Wireless does. They charge you a lot, we charge you a little. So naturally, when they announced they'd be raising their prices due to inflation, we decided to deflate our prices due to not hating you. That's right. We're cutting the price of Mint Unlimited from $30 a month to just $15 a month. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
We discover that Rhys has decided to pay Tamlin a visit in Chapter 11. Immediately, we learn that, quote, it was spring, and yet it wasn't. This is a red flag for us as readers. We learn very quickly that things are amiss. Quote, the pink roses that had once climbed the pale stone walls of the sweeping manor house were nothing but tangled webs of thorns. The fountains had gone dry, the hedges untrimmed and shapeless. First off, this quote is a great nod to the Thorns and Roses title. Beyond that, it also foreshadows how Rhysand will find Tamlin. He is untended and uncaring. There's a general lack of life about the whole place, just like there will be a lack of life in Tamlin.
It's also a reminder that it's a link between the High Lord and his lands. On the estate, nothing bloomed. It's dry, it's sad. Tamlin, in theory, may still have his power, but he's not in a good place. He impacts the land. Like, at the end of the day, it's all tied to him. Mm-hmm. And maybe, just saying, maybe this is a link to the Autumn Court rotting.
And Baron being the cause of it.
Because he's rot.
He is rotten.
Or he's rotting. Gangrene.
As Rhys approaches the manor, he notices that, quote, the great oak doors were undeniably worse for wear. Deep, long claw marks had been slashed down them. If you recall from Season 1, doors were a significant symbol in Thorns and Roses. The same door that was destroyed when Tamlin was taken under the mountain, which forever changed the course of Feyre's life, was fixed by Tamlin in Mist and Fury, as if doing so could fix all their problems or cover them up. That same door is once again destroyed.
I feel like doors and Tamlin, like you said, they've always been linked. Tamlin, more than any other character, is really associated with doors. Mm-hmm. He smashes them down. He gets them replaced. He tries to fix all these things. He slashes them. And I was trying to just think about what doors in general represent. Mm-hmm. And I think it's not willing to accept what's on the other side in many ways of the unknown, because you don't know what's behind a door. You're going to have to open it up and just kind of go for it. And he doesn't open doors. He violates them. Mm-hmm. He smashes them. Mm-hmm. Or they're violated and smashed for him. And he tries to keep resurrecting them and rebuilding. I hope it's done on purpose. And I hope when we get more about him in future books, we see that a little bit more.
Yeah.
Because it's such a great imagery to play with. And I think I'll steal it.
Yeah, absolutely. As everyone should.
She doesn't own doors.
She doesn't own doors or thresholds.
You go to her home and she literally doesn't own doors. It's all
it's all open.
It's all open.
No, I think you make a great point. I look forward to seeing the continuation of Tamlin's story and the imagery that SJM will choose to use, because she's done a lot to tie him to specific images, and it will be very interesting to see that journey. Mm-hmm. I don't know where it's going to go, but it's going somewhere.
It's going.
We have a lovely food is power moment between Rhys and Tamlin when Rhys arrives. Rhys asks Tamlin for a cup of tea, and I think this is more than Rhys just being annoying, but it's also a great way to be annoying. It's also Rhys testing the bounds of Tamlin's hold on civility, on the proper high fae that Tamlin is, and how much of the inner beast has taken over. By letting Rhys in after this request, regardless of whether or not Rhys gets any tea, Tamlin is showing that he still has a grasp on his quote-unquote humanity, for lack of a better word, and that Tamlin has not completely succumbed to the beast.
There's something about tea to have that be your request.
I know.
I don't know why. That makes it sassier to me.
And very British.
In England, that's like very comforting. And it's definitely something that other people would offer to make you. And then to just come in and demand it.
Yeah.
I'm like, do you add creamer to it? Like,
Rhys is out for blood, basically, is what we're saying.
Yeah, he is. So back to your beast comment. Rhys realizes that Lucien is there and out hunting for food. And Rhys makes a comment that, oh, wow, no one's there to buy food or prepare it. Lucien has to go and hunt for it. I think it's just kind of this moment of there's a bit more animalistic nature to Tamlin. I think we can safely assume that Tamlin isn't using a bow and arrow to hunt for his own food.
No.
And it's almost like Lucien is bringing the civility by being the one to go hunt for it. And it shows that Tamlin has the male and the beast within. They're warring with one another. Also, I think it's a little bit rude that Rhys considers Lucien to be Tamlin's crony. He's being a friend.
Speaking on the Lucien topic, the fact that Lucien's hunting, and I assume it's with a bow and arrow, although it might not be, but I assume it is.
What else? What do you...
Fire? I don't know.
2-in-1 deal.
Barbecue.
Got squirrels or a little crispy.
But with the bow and arrow, it ties him to Feyre.
It does.
Which ties him to Elaine.
That's a great point.
Because we're going to see, Elaine makes a comment that's described as being shot straight as an arrow. Just pointing that out.
Here's another one. Lucien's out there preparing dinner. Elaine, in a couple chapters, is out there preparing dinner.
Yep.
Yeah. Think of the sandwiches they could make together. She can make the bread.
Birch squirrel sandwich.
Oh my God. It went from real tasty to...
That might be my new sticker that I designed.
Birch squirrel. I don't think anyone wants that sticker, Amy. I can confidently say that.
I do.
It's like, if you guys really want a burnt squirrel sandwich sticker, please send us an email. For some reason, I think it'll be a resounding silence there, or an onslaught of emails saying, for the love of God.
Please don't.
Why do I have this image of like this squirrel flat out between
exactly with it,
two bread
with little crosses on its eyes and its tongue sticking out
and its tail like
burnt?
Why are the tongue sticking out? You're going
dead.
No, it means dead, but it's just so cruel. And like the tail sticking like crispy and fried on the back. It's so gross. There's a squirrel that likes to harass me here.
The one that gives you nuts.
Yeah, the only nuts I'm getting, as you've said.
The nutting you get.
Oh my God. But I'm just thinking about that squirrel being the squirrel sandwich. And honestly, I kind of support it. He's a jerk sometimes to me. I don't really appreciate him. He's rude.
Oh. Back to the topic on hand.
Yeah.
Rhys describes the entire manor as a tomb. Feyre used this same description in Wings and Ruin when she noticed how her first bedroom had been destroyed by Tamlin during her absence in Mist and Fury.
Yes. It's also a great visual representation of Tamlin wanting to preserve and stay in all of his wrongs. Things are kept the way they were, and he is able to sit there and constantly be reminded of all the ways that he messed up. Tamlin is mentally fucked up, and I hate to say it, guys. I mean, I don't really hate to say it. I love it because I'm causing you all turmoil. But SJM wants us to feel bad for Tamlin. She is laying it on so thick because SJM's probably going to redeem him one day.
This is all our speculation. When Rhys and Tamlin settle in Tamlin's study, the only untouched room in the manor, Tamlin sits on, quote, an ornate cushioned chair, the only thing he had that was close to a throne. I slid into the matching seat across from him. Just like Tamlin and Rhys became High Lords at the same time, the same night, they both sit on equal thrones across from each other in this room. We've talked a lot the last 4 seasons how Tamlin and Rhys are similar, and here we see that again visually represented in these chairs.
I freaked when I saw that they were sitting on equal chairs, and I think it's also meant to give us a clue about what's about to happen. Rhys is about to eviscerate Tamlin, absolutely destroy him, and go in on him. Rhys is not being the better man. He is stooping to Tamlin's level. Not that Tamlin is taunting Rhys, but he's a piece of shit. Get on board with that with me, please. Please and thank you. It's a reminder that Rhys is as similar or as distant to Tamlin as he chooses to be. And in this moment, he's similar. At one point, Rhys gets to the point and talks about protecting the human borders. And Tamlin says, to protect the humans from us? A sneer. Tamlin sneers at the idea of needing to protect the humans from the Fae, almost as if he believes that he needed the protection from humans, particularly one former human.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of that one former human, I just had a thought, and I want to go back to something you said earlier this episode.
Mm-hmm.
Feyre went to bed without talking to Rhys about Tamlin, and Rhys brooded over it. It's not unlike the way that Feyre treated Tamlin in Wings and Ruin, constantly going to bed and not engaging him.
Oh, I kind of interpret it the other way around. I interpreted Rhys being the Feyre and Feyre being the Tamlin.
Oh, well, the only reason why I say it the way I said it is because it puts Rhys in Tamlin's position and explains why Rhys stoops to Tamlin's position.
I agree. Whichever direction you want to look at it, but I can I like your version more because these are two guys who need to talk about their feelings.
Yeah.
Wow, I think we just solved the world's problems.
More men need to talk about their feelings?
Truly, though.
Tamlin and Rhys have a verbal sparring match, and Rhys intentionally eggs Tamlin on. Quote, I braced for it, readied for it, wanted it, for him to explode out of that chair and launch himself at me, for his claws to start slashing. But Tamlin only stared, and after a heartbeat, his eyes lowered to the desk. I do not care who you are, but I am here to tell you something has fundamentally changed about Tamlin. Wrath and rage are how Tamlin has been characterized since Thorns and Roses through Wings and Ruin. And let me ask you a really important question. If a Tamlin doesn't explode, is he even a Tamlin at all?
It's a great question. Like, he is broken. He doesn't have that spark, that fire. The one thing that he couldn't control is the one thing that is now gone.
Right. Probably for the best.
Oh, hell yeah.
To be honest.
Hell yeah.
Right? I don't know to what extent he's just broken versus he recognizes that his anger has not served him.
That's a good point.
And I don't think we're going to know until we see more of him.
I hope it's a little bit of both, because then you can rebuild.
Right.
At the end of the day, people who have a lot of anger problems just need to redirect it. One thing my therapist loves to say is that anger is a secondary emotion. You don't just feel anger, you feel something else that then triggers the anger.
Mm-hmm.
Thoughts. People need to express their thoughts.
And feelings.
And feelings.
In Rhys's eyes, Tamlin doesn't deserve sympathy. But even Rhys feels hollow from this encounter. Tamlin is broken and despondent. Broken and despondent like Elaine was, like Nesta will be, like Feyre was, like it's just the makings of a character development journey. Like I said, Feyre's been this way too. Feyre has been broken and despondent, and though Tamlin won't have the same journey as Feyre, it feels clear that SJM is setting Tamlin up for something.
I love some of the comparisons you made here, because when you think about two characters in this book who are off to the side, who are in the midst of their self-hatred and spiraling and doing everything they can to make it worse, it's Tamlin and Nesta.
Mm-hmm.
The difference is Nesta's book was the next one to come, to be redeemed. And then Nesta does see Tamlin in Silver Flames.
Mm-hmm.
It's just an interesting connection of like, wow, both of you guys are really struggling.
Yeah.
In the past, one of the times when Rhys came to the house, he had Tamlin get on his knees and beg. And this time, when Rhys comes here, he goes hard on Tamlin. Like, I keep saying that, but I just want you to know that we're not meant to feel good. We are meant to feel icky. Even if what Rhys says is fair, there's a lot of pent up aggression and anger and resentment. And while, yes, 80% of his anger comes from Tamlin, I will give him that. I'd say there's roughly 20% of his anger that might be coming from somewhere else. Later on, when Feyre asks him, like, yo, bro, what's up? You good? He can't even answer that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to have a question. And that question is going to be, did Rhys go too hard? But before, Amy, you answer that, I'm going to read a little bit to you. Quote, you nearly destroyed her in every way possible. She survived it, though. Survived you. And you still felt the need to humiliate her, belittle her. Yeah, totally fair, Rhys. Love it. Love it. But then he keeps going. You deserve everything that has befallen you. You deserve this pathetic, empty house, your ravaged lands. I don't care if you offered that kernel of life to save me. I don't care if you still love my mate. I hope you live the rest of your miserable life alone here. It is a far more satisfying end than slaughtering you. Then also keep in mind that Tamlin doesn't have a single shield around him because he almost expects someone to come in and kill him. So, I ask you again, did Rhys go too hard?
I think Rhys did go too hard. I think Rhys has a lot of remaining resentment from his years under the mountain that is rightly directed towards Tamlin, but I don't know that is necessary right now. But I also think Tamlin set the scene for Rhys to do this.
Tamlin killed his mom and sister too, yeah.
Right. And you know how Rhys is egging Tamlin on and Tamlin's not delivering?
Mm-hmm.
I think in some ways, Tamlin is doing the egging on and he's getting exactly what he wants from Rhys.
Yeah.
And I think he really wants to, trigger warning, I think Tamlin wants someone to kill him.
Absolutely.
Like, he's purposefully not protecting those borders. He's purposefully removed the wards on the house.
Yep.
Because he wants someone to come and be mad at him and put him out of his misery.
How much does he want Feyre to do that herself?
Probably.
Like to see her one more time?
Probably. And the fact that no one's willing to give him that's how little they think of him, is probably even worse for Tamlin.
Yeah.
Because he's not mentally prepared to work through the shit.
Like you were saying, Rhys has every reason to hate Tamlin as much as he does. And all of this is satisfying in so many ways that he finally gets to say all the things to Tamlin that he doesn't get to say. I think the part that I have to remind people is that in the last book, Rhys says we have to be better. If we're going to rebuild this, we have to be better than what we were. And that's his whole frame of mind is like, okay, we're going to make this new world a better world.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't do that if you're going in like this.
Yeah. I wonder to what extent the way Rhys is going in hard is like, look, I gave up my life and I had it easy. I had the easy out. And you made me come back and do the hard work. So you have to fucking do the hard work too.
Yeah. I mean, and he also gets to talk to someone finally.
Yeah.
You know, like Rhys, I'm sure, is happy to be alive, but also exhausted.
Yeah, like he's worked hard for 500 years.
Yeah.
He's probably over it.
Yeah, like, you know, he's happy to be with Feyre and be with his friends and everything, but he made a call on his own body, like you were saying earlier. And like we were saying earlier, he finally has someone to talk to. And that talking is actually a verbal punching bag.
I mean, in that way, he's no different than Feyre was at the start of Mist and Fury, Rhys.
Yeah.
Because Feyre had resentment. She was ready to die too.
Yeah. I like that. I do like that a lot. Because we were saying that Feyre, I feel like, has grown quite a bit and she's beyond. I can definitely see Rhys having a lot of... And then Feyre felt bad about surviving.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure he has a lot of survivor's guilt that we're not even touching on.
Yeah.
Why did he get to come back to life when so many people did not? And he gets to what? Just feel good about that and live his happily ever after?
Yeah.
Complex.
Very complex. After giving Tamlin the verbal lashing of a lifetime, Rhys goes back to Velaris and finds Feyre. I want to point out that when Rhys finds Feyre and kisses her, he smells her lilac and pear scent. In this very same chapter, at the start, Rhys noticed that the lilacs were, quote, still in eternal bloom at the spring court. In fact, I have vague memories of lilacs being mentioned in every book when Feyre is in the spring court. To me, Feyre's lilac scent is a reminder that Feyre came from the spring court and that Feyre's journey is incomplete without the spring court. Even if Feyre did not end up with Tamlin and didn't stay in the spring court, no one can deny that it is part of her and her journey.
I love that point. Such a good point. The pears threw me off. Like, what? Why are we introducing pears into this? And they're not, I was like, maybe they're like a winter thing. No, they're not. It
just reminds me of my favorite Victoria's Secret body splash scent from like the early 2000s.
Throwback.
Yeah, right? When Rhys goes to the jeweler looking for a present for Feyre, he recalls Feyre's diamond cuffs. Feyre wore the cuffs the night of Starfall when she began to feel alive again and acknowledge her feelings for Rhys. Rhys also made love to Feyre while she wore her diamond cuffs the night they returned to Velaris after the war, after he'd just been resurrected. The cuffs will come up again, so these visual reminders are a little taste of what's to come. But also, I wonder if these cuffs are significant as a symbol of love or power. In donning the jewelry, Feyre has figuratively cuffed herself to Rhys. In Chapter 12, we see Cassian and Feyre make poor attempts at holiday decorations before they break into Rhys's wine, and Azriel has to redo their shoddy job. We see here Azriel rub his temples in this scene, something I want to note I remember also seeing when the Inner Circle returned to the townhouse after the war at the end of Wings and Ruin. It's a very sly on SJM to include this little action here when you know what Elaine's gift to Azriel will be later on.
Also, when I saw this scene, I was like, this is the two of us. Except sometimes you're Feyre and you're like messing, and you're with me, like messing everything up. Or sometimes you're Azriel fixing my messes.
Yeah.
You switch. But either way, I was looking at this, I'm like, yeah, that's us.
When Amren walks into the townhouse that evening, she is wearing a white fur coat. Amren has never worn anything but gray in all the time that she's been seen in this series. What does the white coat mean? Maybe it is meant to signal Amren's fresh start as a high fae mortal.
I just want to say you're on fire today.
Thank you.
You're doing great.
Feyre finds Elaine in the kitchen, helping Nuala and Caradwyn prepare food for the Inner Circle's pre-solstice evening. Feyre notices that Elaine's, quote, skin had gained color these months. Her face had filled in, too. This is in direct contrast to Elaine at the start of Wings and Ruin, as well as in contrast to Nesta in Frost and Starlight, who Feyre will encounter in the next chapter. At first, Elaine's good health seems to be an indicator that she's begun to accept her faeness. However, we're going to see that is very much not the case when Feyre asks if Elaine is all right, and Elaine plasters on a fake smile, as well as when Amren calls Elaine out for wanting to go back to being human over dinner, which we'll talk more about in a moment.
When Feyre asks Elaine if it's worth fetching Nesta, Elaine's response is, are you asking me that as her sister or as a seer? All right, damn Elaine, calm down here. You can be both. And that is not what Feyre implied at all. Elaine is being a little saucy, and we're going to see more saucy moments from her. I just feel like she might be a bitch. I don't want to say she is one, but I feel like there's potential of saying like, wow, you're kind of an asshole, Elaine.
You know, now that I'm rereading this quote, I wonder how much of this is a psychological tell that Elaine's been seeing visions. And so she's like super potty about it.
Or at least triggered.
Yeah, she's triggered, right? Yeah. Because Feyre was obviously not talking about you seeing anything, Elaine. But no, I don't see things.
Yeah, it's like,
yeah, you do, bitch.
It's like, hey, do you want to get dinner tonight? No, I didn't eat 5 pieces of cake.
Yeah, exactly.
What? I didn't. What do you want? Didn't ask that.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's a tell almost.
I agree. And that's what I mean. Like, I don't want to say that Elaine is a bitch or that I don't like her. You know, I think what this does is add a lot of layers of complexity that we have all just glazed over.
Agree.
And this book in particular gives us a lot of that with Elaine. Mm-hmm. In this chapter, we're going to get into more of how there's a secret layer to her.
Yeah. Or many secret layers. She might be an onion. She might be an ogre.
She's an ogre. She's an ogre onion.
Elaine being upset with Nesta is interesting. In some ways, we're reminded that a divide has taken place between them, long before the killing of the King of Hybern. If we recall from Season 3, Elaine and Nesta were already starting to separate in Wings and Ruin. Now that Nesta is the one rejecting her faeness, and in the process rejecting her sisters, since, you know, she says to Elaine that they have their lives and she has hers, Elaine is demonstrating pain and fear. I wonder if the pain and fear is not because of Nesta's attitude, but because Elaine gets the sense that their places have swapped, that maybe Elaine is too comfortable in her faeness if she's closer to Feyre than she is to Nesta.
We are getting some Azriel and Elaine tension in this chapter, and SJM is preparing us for that before we even see that tension. As Elaine walks in, it's described as, quote, veils of steam drifting past her shoulders from the roasted rosemary potatoes in her hand, as if they were Azriel's shadows. Like, hey, connect these two, please.
And then you'll see the tension.
Yeah. When Elaine greets Daddy Azzy, everyone can feel the sexual tension. More even gets tense when Azriel approaches Elaine. And then Azriel takes the potatoes from Elaine and she freezes and she kind of goes into a little panicky mode. I want to go to the secret chapter from Silver Flames. And if at this point you don't know what I'm talking about when I say secret chapter, there's a secret chapter in Silver Flames from Azriel's point of view. It happens right after Solstice. Just Google it and you'll see it come up.
And to clarify, it's the solstice that takes place in Silver Flames.
In Silver Flames, yeah. Thank you. In that chapter, he mentions that the two of them have had stolen touches. And that is exactly what happened here, right? Like, he took the potatoes from her, and I bet he gave her a little finger caress.
Yes.
And then he walked away and clenched his hands, like Darcy style,
Mm.
you know?
Mm-hmm. Pride and Prejudice.
Pride and Prejudice, and was like, I'm never washing this hand again. I also will have a secret chapter rant at the end in the breadcrumbs, so be prepared for that.
Stay tuned. We see that Azriel has his own mom-related trauma, just like Cassian, when Azriel projects onto Elaine to ensure that no one eats until Elaine is seated.
Azriel makes everyone wait to eat so that Elaine can be there. And Rhys says that it's because of Azriel's mom and how Azriel's mom was basically a slave. And it's like, of course, he's just trying to be considerate of those who are serving and making the food. Now, I would believe this, but Feyre, just a page ago, accused Elaine of excusing herself because she needed to get dressed and change her clothes, when in actuality, she was just flustered because she just got fingered. She didn't get fingered, she got finger caressed by Azriel. And she was probably flustered and needed a beat. Both mates, Rhys and Feyre, are way off the mark here, and I think that Azriel was being polite and considerate of Elaine.
I respect your opinion.
Oh, you're gonna have something different?
I have something different.
Let me scooch my butt. I want to get comfy.
So I think Elaine and Azriel just had this little moment, right? Of him taking the potatoes. Regardless of what Azriel is thinking, I think Elaine is flustered and wants to go make herself more presentable for him. Like she was caught off guard. She wasn't yet ready for dinner. And so she takes a beat not to like calm down, but she's got to rebraid her hair. She's got to take off the apron. She's got to get the flour off of her, right?
Yeah.
So she's got to make herself more presentable. And I think Azriel, A, is being respectful of that, but also is projecting his mother.
Oh, you think it still has like the
I still
protection?
think it has mother vibes.
You know, I'm not going to fight you when you say Azriel's projecting his mother onto something or mother issues are going to be involved here. I can definitely see that. Elaine definitely needed a beat. It's not the way that Feyre thought it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely was like, oh my God, if a hot guy just touched my fingers, I need to give me a minute.
Yeah, let me make sure I look hot so he wants to keep touching my fingers.
God, to be finger caressed like that, I don't think I ever have been.
It's delightful.
Have you?
Yeah.
Like when there's tension between the two and will they, won't they?
Yeah.
You know, I just remembered I had a one bed trope.
Yeah.
So that did happen.
Yes, you've had your own tropes.
I've had, I forget my life. I just kind of black it out.
We have another great food is power moment with Amren when we learn that, quote, the first normal meal she'd eaten after returning, a bowl of lentil soup, had made her vomit for an hour. An hour. Rough.
Oof.
In Thorns and Roses, Feyre's humanity and weakness was demonstrated in her vomiting. The same principle applies to Amren now. She is now high fae instead of immortal, and she is weaker than she was before the events of Wings and Ruin. I want to go back to the topic of Elaine and the conversation she and Amren have over dinner. Elaine is curious about how Amren was neither male nor female before the cauldron, and since reforming the cauldron, had to pick a sex for her body.
When Amren explains that the female form was more pleasing, Mor frowns at herself and stares at her own body and says, true, and then Cassian starts laughing. Like, come on. Mor's thinking about her sexuality and other women, and I think this shows that Cassian knows that.
Right.
You can't convince me otherwise.
Yeah, I agree.
You're like, I'm not trying to convince you otherwise. I'm agreeing with you.
I completely agree. And nobody is, like, bothered by the comment. I think everybody knows.
Everyone knows.
Continuing on. So, in this conversation, Amren extrapolates Elaine's curiosity to assume Elaine is curious whether she can become human again. Quote, Elaine's face reddened further, her back straightening, but she didn't bolt. I don't know what you're talking about. I'd never heard Elaine's voice so cold. Elaine, as we can tell from this interaction, is pretending to be Fae. Her fuller body and more color in her complexion are both a disguise to make Elaine seem like she is assimilating. In this way, she's a lot like Mor, who continues to keep her sexuality a secret. And why do I make that connection? Well, Elaine's never been called moody before, yet a couple pages prior, Feyre observed that Nuala and Caradwyn, quote, spent more time with Elaine than I ever had. They understood her moods. Since when has Elaine had moods? Who else has moods? Mor. I think I'm going to continue to make a case that Elaine is a lot like Mor. We've already seen it with, light and whatnot with Azriel. Because of that, It either makes Elaine the best or worst match for Azriel and explains why Azriel continues to be drawn to Elaine, because she's more.
I have a thought.
Go ahead.
This might hurt you.
Go ahead.
So Moore was brutalized by her family.
Mm-hmm.
There's been suggestions that she might have even been sexually assaulted in that brutalization before dumped at the Autumn Court. Azriel went and got her, right? And and we're seeing similarities between Elaine and everything. And he gets to go and protect Elaine, who's another female who was sexually assaulted, that then Azriel went and picked up. And like Moore, who went and found her strength and became an actual fighter after her abuse, went on and became a fighter herself.
Gwyn.
Yeah. I agree with the things that there are aspects of Elaine that are a lot like Moore. And I think that Azriel will realize that those are qualities and traits that he really admires.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you'll find that more in someone
Gwyn.
else, in Gwyn.
Yeah, I mean, it could either be a recipe for, I could see it both ways, right? That Gwyn is a replica of Moore in the best ways for Azriel, or Gwyn is a replica of Moore and therefore is incompatible with Azriel.
Oh, yeah, completely.
SJM, just make it muddying the waters for us constantly.
I'm so mad. Also, what about the fact that Feyre says that Elaine is lucid most days? Meaning that there's days where she's not lucid? Does that mean she's having visions, or is she in a depressive spiral?
I think that goes back to the whole Elaine lashing out thing of like, are you asking me as a sister or as a seer?
I don't know. Maybe if I was asking you as a seer, you tell me what the fucking lottery numbers were. All right? That's what you should do.
Because they need more money.
Maybe you should tell me which outfit I look better in, Elaine. Damn it.
Before I even ask you.
Yeah.
Just tell me.
Tell me what I'm wearing. Oh my God. Talk about a great seer power. Hey, Elaine, what am I wearing tonight?
Feyre goes looking for Nesta after dinner with Rhys in tow, hoping she can convince her older sister to join their family for solstice evening. Where does Feyre find Nesta? At the Wolf's Den. We know how significant the wolf image has been for Feyre's identity over the last 2 seasons. Why, then, is the seedy bar where Feyre finds Nesta called the Wolf's Den? Is it significant?
I mean, it's the same way that Feyre had to start with a wolf. Her story started killing a wolf, and Nesta's story starts with a wolf. Mm-hmm.
Good point.
Thank you. Thank you.
Slow clap.
Oh, wait, there's other people clapping in the room? That's it's me. Yeah, he was clapping for myself. I mean, I couldn't have done it without you. You pointed out the wolf's den. But yeah, I think it is starts with a wolf. It always starts with a wolf.
Always. I mean, Elaine's story better start with a wolf now.
Right?
Gotta be consistent, Sarah.
You know, I don't think you understand your own genius.
Let us point it out for you.
And I need you to continue it. Chapter 13 starts with the woman, the legend, the one everyone keeps skirting around, Nesta. I mean, everyone keeps talking about her, and we're just now getting her.
Yeah.
It's great. And Nesta has changed big time since we last saw her. She's lost weight. She's drinking. She's playing cards. And that is meant to be as jarring as possible because this is the Nesta that we'll see in Silver Flames. And any time that someone says they skip this book and go straight to Silver Flames, it was like, you're not going to be prepared for what you see.
No.
Also, shout out to Nesta wearing a gray gown. Gray is an anti-hero. And I really do look forward to the day that we analyze Silver Flames because we do not get enough true female antiheroes where you're not meant to like them. They're not going to be quirky and kind of relatable. No, they're not your hero, and I love it. And all through this, Nesta's hair is braided into a crown, still giving her an appearance of a queen. I'm also not a fan of the slight shadowing of slut-shaming that Feyre is doing here when she asks Nesta, which guy are you bringing home? And she wonders who Nesta lost her virginity to. But I am going to give Feyre a break here. And I think that maybe this is initially a sister trying to connect with her big sister, you know, maybe joking like, hey, so which one of these guys are you bringing home? I don't think that's like the full attitude, but I don't want to fully blame Feyre yet. Now, in Silver Flames, they will be slut-shaming her.
And as I'm going to talk about in a little bit and probably in future episodes, Feyre loves Nesta.
Yeah.
Doesn't know how to communicate with her.
Oh, yeah.
I don't want to assume the worst of Feyre here, but it's not great.
Oh.
Feyre sees a painting in her mind when she sees Nesta. Even though Nesta's not at her best, we're seeing Feyre's painting sense come back to life. And that's an important signal for us that change is taking place in Feyre, that some of that feminine has creeped back in the best way possible.
In the best way.
As I was saying earlier, Feyre loves Nesta desperately, but is terrible at showing it. When they have a conversation about why Nesta wasn't at dinner that evening with the rest of the inner circle, Feyre tells her sister, quote, "She, Elaine, wanted you there." And then Feyre thinks, "I wanted you there." Why is Feyre so bad at communicating with Nesta? This will not be the last time we see Feyre struggle to be honest about how she's feeling.
Why can't she just say that? I wanted you there. It's simple.
It's so simple.
It's not even like it was I want you there because I feel like we really grew close to one another in the last book and I really want us to continue to find that connection again. No, I want you there. It's easy.
Easy. We see Nesta continue to reject her Feyness during her conversation with Feyre. Quote, "Solstice is not even our holiday. We don't have holidays. As I told Elaine, you have your lives and I have mine." This makes me wonder if Nesta is resentful of the prayer Feyre said over their father's body before she cremated him. Just, part of the whole anger, rejection, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah, absolutely. It's also like, do I have to pitch a holiday to you where we get presents?
Who are you?
Why is this hard, Nesta? God. SJM gives you the biggest heads up of what Silver Flames is going to be like after all of this, as if you don't already have a taste. But through all of this, you get the cringiest moment where Feyre's like, show up to dinner. And Nesta's like, fuck you. I don't care. By the way, rent is due in a couple days. It's so hard to read that. It's so cringy. And she doesn't even flinch when she asks that. But that's Silver Flames.
Silver Flames. It gives you a little taste of who Nesta is and what's really going on inside.
And what's to come. Just that hard. I think people struggle to read Silver Flames. It's really divided.
Yeah. And it's uncomfortable because Nesta's in a shit place.
Yeah.
One last note before we go to breadcrumbs. As Feyre leaves the wolf's den, she feels Nesta glare at, quote, "the space between my shoulder blades." Now, this could be a coincidence, but that happens to be where the bargain tattoo Feyre had with the bone carver was once situated. And I thought that was an interesting tidbit.
It is.
No thoughts.
No. We have so many thoughts about to happen.
Yeah. Now, let's head into the breadcrumbs. And before we get there, spoilers for Silver Flame's secret chapter and Maas verse in general. In Chapter 6, Rhys talks about the Illyrian army. Quote, "So we might need the Illyrians again before it is over. Need them willing to shed blood." Why say that when there wasn't a war that happened in Silver Flames? Maybe because it will come back in Crescent City 3 or even the next ACOTAR book.
Even then. In Chapter 8, when Cassian meets Emery and she stares at him, quote, "It reminded him of Nesta, that stare. He'd seen that fire before, and the steel. He'd half wondered what might have happened if the two of them ever met. What might have come of it. Nesta and Emery are going to become besties in Silver Flames, so I guess it's no surprise that Emery reminds Cassian of Nesta. It's just more foreshadowing."
Yep. Chapter 13. When Feyre and Nesta talk at the wolf's den, quote, "Nesta waited too, still as an animal, still as death." Just hinting at Nesta's death powers.
Yep. Before I go into my last talking point, I do want to, for the people who might not have known are super vague, this is a spoiler-free thing when we were talking about Azriel and Rhys. I just want to say, I was referencing that they might be distantly related because they're related to the Princes of Hell.
And when I was talking about the cold references, they might be part Valg.
Yeah, so. Now, here's my talking point for the secret chapter. We're not going to be doing Silver Flames for a really long time. We keep referencing the secret chapter, so I just wanted to bring a couple things. Like the fact that Azriel's shadows hide from Elaine, that they leave whenever she's there, but then with Gwen, the shadows watch and even sing with her, and they dance when she breathes. And I also forgot that Daddy Azzy doesn't give Gwen the necklace directly. He leaves it for her with Clotho, and Gwen doesn't know that Azriel gave her that necklace.
So fucking messy.
It's so messy. I eat this up. There's so many clues that Gwen is the mate.
Even if not mate, there's definitely an attraction. There's definitely a connection. And Sarah J. Maas is just here to get us all worked up about it.
We're worked up.
We are worked up.
Now for the question, Amy, what are Rhys, Elaine, and Nesta really lashing out about?
I think at the core of it, for all three of them, life has not gone the way they planned.
You're not wrong.
I think there's a lot of anger and resentment for the outcome of Wings and Ruin. This is not what they signed up for.
Yep.
Like I said earlier, Rhys was ready to die. We know that. All of Wings and Ruin, he was ready to die.
So ready.
And he died. And then he got brought back against his will. And yes, he's happy to be with Feyre, but it's okay to also not be happy.
Yeah, you were at peace with everything. And this is going to give me a different thing. Sorry if I'm spoiling this for you guys, but with Buffy the Vampire Slayer, when Buffy gets brought back, it's like you can be happy and you get everything you want, but we're human. We can have complex emotions. You can feel two things at once.
Yeah. Yeah. And it could be damn, this is hard and I don't want to do this. And I had an out.
I was ready. Like he was ready. He was at peace with it.
Yeah.
And now his life is tied to Feyre, and that's stressful, and he has to rebuild this entire world, and that's stressful.
And I think some of this residual anger and this lashing out that we're seeing here really plays into his character and what he's doing in Silver Flames.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people get mad at Rhys in Silver Flames and have this theory that he's evil.
Mm-hmm.
No, I think he's just gone through some really hard shit and he hasn't worked through it.
He hasn't worked through it. He's in this, death pact with Feyre, which is also really screwed up because now he doesn't get to have a say in his own life anymore.
Right. And think about all the trauma he's endured. 50 years under Amarantha.
Mm-hmm.
And then another war and death.
Yeah.
All within a year.
So, yes, right? He hadn't really even recovered from Amarantha before all of this.
Right.
He hasn't even begun to process that.
Right. So I think, he's mad at Tamlin for Tamlin being Tamlin. I think there's more to it.
Absolutely. And then the same thing with Elaine. Like, we don't know. Other than resentment there's going to be more than just resentment for being human.
Right. Or Faye.
Faye, yeah. Sorry. There's more, that. And then with Nesta, we find out in Silver Flames, like there's so much more going on there. But I'd say these are the three characters that have the most going. I mean, let's throw Tamlin in the mix too.
Yeah.
These are all characters that are just really struggling and no one's saying their full pain.
Right. And unlike Feyre, who's really found peace or will find peace, and that's why this is the end of her journey, there is not a lot of peace to go around.
Yeah.
Mor's not at peace. Cassian's not at peace. Azriel's not at peace. None of these characters are at peace.
Feyre's over here being like, I'm having a great time, guys.
Like, the reason why SGM can keep writing ACOTAR books is because there is still so much to unpack for these characters. And there's still so much of a journey for each of them to go on.
Now that I'm even thinking about it more, we get a lot more Rhys in Silver Flames from what I remember than we do Feyre because he's not at peace.
He's not at peace. He's still progressing.
Yeah. And that doesn't mean Feyre's found absolute peace, but, she's been communicating her emotions very clearly in this book so far.
Yeah.
Everyone just needs to paint. Everyone needs to go take a look at the Ouroboros and see if you break.
Good luck.
Good luck.
And now here's this week's featured review from Apple Podcasts.
This week's review comes from Marge, titled Book Besties. Now, before I get into it, Marge, thank you for the review. Love you. I think this might have been an accident, but this was rated 1 star.
But it's so positive.
It's so positive. Either you're the nicest 1-star reviewer there ever was. I would love to see what a 5-star review is like, but let me read it. I absolutely love this podcast. The way they take the book and give you beautiful depth, meaning, and views on a series I already love. Thank you, ladies, for making me love reading again. P.S. Daddy Azzy forever.
Marge, that was the nicest
1-star review
we've ever had. Thank you so much. Also, yes, Daddy Azzy forever, despite how broken he might be.
You know what? His brokenness makes him more forever for me.
And if you would like to be featured on the podcast, please leave us a 5-star written review on Apple Podcasts. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Book Talk for Book Talk. We encourage you to rate and subscribe to our show on your preferred podcast listening platform. Next week, we will be exploring chapters 14 through 19 of A Court of Frost and Starlight.
We would love to hear your thoughts based on today's conversation. You can submit your comments to our form at booktalkforbooktalk.com for a chance to have your feedback discussed during a weekly mini episode.
If you are enjoying the podcast, please visit our website, booktalkforbooktalk.com, to view our latest merch and learn about supporting the show through Patreon, Ko-Fi, or Venmo. You can also follow us on TikTok or Instagram at the handle booktalkforbooktalk. Bye!
Fall has officially started here in Los Angeles, and that means we finally get to do fall activities.
I have been counting down the days for when I can go to pumpkin patches, maybe even hit up an apple orchard, and I get to do all of it looking super cute in my Quince boyfriend sweater.
This weather is perfect for my dark academia vibes, and I'm so excited to bust out my washable silk blouse because you know I'm going to be taking pictures.
Quince is known for their Mongolian cashmere sweaters from $50. And that's not all. Quince has so many other amazing things on their website.
All of those items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands.
That includes leather jackets, cotton cardigans, soft denim. Like, my entire fall wardrobe is genuinely turning into Quince wardrobe.
By partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the cost of the middleman, we get savings as the customer.
One of my favorite parts about Quince is the fact that they only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices. And they still manage to get premium fabrics and finishes for that, luxury feeling for every item that they have.
Get cozy in Quince's high-quality wardrobe essentials. Go to quince.com/booktalk for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's Quince, QUINCE.com/booktalk, BOOKTALK, to get free shipping and 365-day returns. That's quince.com/booktalk.
Hey, I'm Ryan Reynolds. Recently, I asked Mint Mobile's legal team if big wireless companies are allowed to raise prices due to inflation. They said yes. And then when I asked if raising prices technically violates those onerous two-year contracts, they said, "What the f*** are you talking about, you insane Hollywood ass?" So to recap, we're cutting the price of Mint Unlimited from $30 a month to just $15 a month. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.